it's a genuine mistake, a bad one to make as well. Tunnel vision almost to catching these certain fish. She didn't ban me, she warned me. Sean wanted me off. It was £40 for. He caught a 30 the first day, his first 30, and then he jumped the gun and caught a 40 the second day. And it was a huge pike. Then my battery died. It's light, it's like not good. Like panic, pulled over, literally the Land Rover with the Rangers started to stop to let me out. That's how close it was, how fine that was, that fine line of that campaign.
In this episode, we're privileged to have with us Jamie Robb, one of the North's finest big fish hunters, a normal guy from a normal walk of life with some incredible stories to tell. Jamie, a lot of anglers won't recognise your name. I would say you're probably one of the most under the radar anglers out there, big fish anglers out there. So just to give people a bit of context, sort of who you are, your fishing, where are you based and how would you describe yourself as an angler?
I'm based just north of Lancaster, in between Lancaster and Kendal, and I'd describe myself as a bit eccentric in my way I fish, a bit mad in occasional instances, keen and hungry for it is probably the best way to describe my form of angling. It's that I go out of my way to put the extra effort in, and that means almost from a perspective, from my point, the driving side of it, I'm travelling a lot further than a lot of people. So the extra effort, meaning that I'm having to get up earlier or having to drive further, and I'm spending probably more of my own finances to fulfil my targets. So from my angling perspective, extra effort equals reward. Yeah.
What does your fishing mean to you?
Everything really. It's something that since I was young, it's been sort of my rock really that sort of brings me back down to realisation of who we are and what we are as human beings. It takes us back to the basics, away from all the hustle and bustle of modern reality really, and takes us into the real world, how I like to put it, and grounding. It helps you ground into form of feeling nature and sensing nature like we used to, and hunter-gatherer sense. But yeah,
I know you as a big carp hunter, and also a big pike angler. But I want to start with your carp fishing. You've probably been on quite a carp fishing journey through your life, both geographically and kind of literally. I imagine it's taken you all over the country. So let's take it right back. When did you catch your first carp?
First carp, I was probably about 8. With one of my mum's ex-partners. He took me fishing with a pole, so I started feeder fishing and pole fishing and match fishing really. That was my first start into catching small carp on commercial fisheries, and then realising that these big ones swimming around on the surface were pretty uncatchable on that sort of gear because we'd just get smashed. And that sort of evolved into braided lines and certain carp hooks and applications to target the bigger fish. So that started mainly when I was sort of 11, 12, 13. Caught my first 20 pounder from Cumbria, from a lake that never done a 20 pounder before. Stalked it in the rain. I still remember it to this day. It was quite an epic feat to catch a leather as well. It was a true nude leather, and that was the first real drive to catch big fish, and that sort of developed into the obsession that's become to this day. Was more so is targeting specific certain fish instead of just going fishing for the sake of fishing. So it started at a young age, but mainly by myself. I was very fortunate that my mother would drop me off at places. We were quite not poor, but we were not wealthy family, so it was when we could afford bits of tackle and bits of things, I would go around washing cars or cutting lawns and things just so I could afford a spool of braid and just try and get off save getting smashed up by certain fish. So it led from there to the obsession that outside of the north when I learned to pass my test, and that was south mainly, and that developed into what it is now, I suppose, the obsession.
So you're based near Lancaster, not exactly the hotbed of carp fishing in the country. So you're fishing in the north of England until you pass your driving test.
Yeah.
And you spread your wings. So what's next? You start fishing gravel pits down south?
Yeah, I threw myself in at the deep end, really. I fished linear a little bit when I was younger. I fished the junior British Championships when I was younger. You probably don't know that, but it was something that, I did quite well. One of my friends who I didn't win the qualifier by, I was very close to winning the qualifier, and I give this lad the rest of my bait and sort of told him this is what you need to do in the final, and he won. And that's Tom Dove through Corda, and the guy who's sort of main sort of face behind Corda now.
Wow.
So yeah, that sort of was my sort of start to learning sort of the southern gravel pits, because where I'd fished up north was Wyreside Lakes, so from Cumbria to fishing all the Lake District waters for predator species. We'll cover that later, but mainly carp, pretty thin on the ground. We had a handful of waters, and those waters on this complex were quite tricky, so we started off on the smaller lakes and worked our way up. There was an age limit, so you had to be over 17 to fish the syndicate waters. I've somehow managed to get on them when I was 16. So yeah, I sort of developed quite quickly, and I was just like a sponge, taking in all the information off the older people and learning how to cast. And I couldn't cast past 100 yards because of the tackle I had. It wasn't that I could not do it if I had the right tackle, it was just basically I couldn't afford the right tackle. So we would buy spod rods or to get the range that we needed, and then eventually I got a job and started working in an apprenticeship, and I can afford the stuff, save up for a full year just for a rod and reel setup, and then we were hitting 130s up against islands, and it became something that casting became a big thing for me, because I really struggled at first. The first year on Wire Lake, it was I sat there so frustrated. I was 20 yards short of them every time, and I wouldn't get the bite, and the lad would turn up next to me and bosh one under the trees and get a bite straight away. So I was sat there all weekend just so you force yourself into up your game, so to speak. So yeah, that was the baseline. From Wyreside Lakes, I turned sort of past my test, did quite well on Wyreside. I planned to target two certain fish in the syndicate. One of them was a fish called paw print, and the other one was a fish called Gladiator 2. And I was baiting two areas of the lake with a certain bait that we'll go into a bit more depth later. And this it all unfolded that I turned up on a Friday after work, and one of the fish got caught from one of the baited areas on the Friday before I got there. A friend of mine, so I was happy for him. First time he'd done 40, and on the Sunday, and the two areas that I was baiting those people in, on the Sunday the other fish come out of the other area at 40. So it wasn't meant to be, unfortunately, but that spurred me on into thinking that maybe this isn't for me. I need to sort of expand my horizons from fishing in the north and try and sort of move down south. And at that moment, I had a close friend of mine, John Rushworth. He went down to a place called Stoneacres. I knew about the place, but just from fishing linear, it was just Lynch Hill was a bit of a rumour really over there, and it wasn't a day ticket water at the time. It was a syndicate lake, and it was right on the verge of being taken over at the time. And I went down there once I passed my test with John. And John is a really good angler. I'll be reserved in saying that. He's really good. I mean, you might have him on here one day, but he did something that's never been repeated on Stoneacres, and he caught 4 of the main fish in 48 hours on his second trip, all casting, no boat work, just casting, finding the fish and casting. And that opened my eyes massively what could be achieved. It didn't turn out that way for me, because I really struggled on there, mainly because I was fishing wire and fishing Stoneacres, and that year I did really well on wire, but I also caught one fish out of Stoneacres, which was a fish called the bulb. There's a story behind the bulb, because it was the small lake behind the greenhouse, and it actually dried up, and it was like a greenhouse pond basically, and there was this like a neon strip, a common. It was a long common, and it was a neon strip, and it was called the bulb, and they moved it into Stoneacres, and this fish swam around with Choco. Choco was the biggest fish in the lake, and I caught the bulb, and that was the only fish I caught that year. And it ended up, that meant more to me than all of the fish that I caught out of wire. I actually had 330s in one session out of a northwest water, which was, quite phenomenal, really. I've repeated it twice since then, but it was something that they didn't really mean as much to me as this bulb. It was £22, I think, something like that. And that spurred a journey to drop the wire side ticket and to delve into fishing down south full time. I say full time, Fridays. After work I would drive down there through the rush hour and take 5 hours occasionally to get down there, and sort of walk around till early hours till we found a few fish, and then sort of get on them and try and optimise. We soon learned it wasn't going to be that easy, but that was the baseline to sort of a bit of understanding of where I've come from.
So just taking it back maybe one step, so when you're maybe 12, you catch some of your first carp in Cumbria, and then obviously we've skipped forward 17, 18, you pass your driving test and you're travelling down south. But by that point, was it just all carp focused, or were there steps along the way?
Mainly, yeah. I mean, from the Lake District when I was younger, sort of growing up, it was mainly pike and perch, because that was the species that we had up there, and the occasional trout. And I grew up fishing Windermere, Coniston, waters like around the Lake District, Grasmere, Rydal, and all the beautiful waters around the Lake District. I still occasionally dabble on them but back then they were so vast and so wild. It was just a bit. It was more my home, so I sort of developed my watercraft around perch and pike, really, and carp were more uncatchables because we didn't have them in the location. And as soon as I realised that I could catch these really big fish, then it was kind of forgotten about for quite a number of years. It became the carp obsession, really, for a good few years. That I didn't focus in fishing for anything else but targeting carp, and I really wanted this choco in my album, and it became the front of my tackle box stuck on, and it was give me some focus every time I opened my tackle box. I never did catch that fish, but unfortunately there's a big story behind that. But from the baseline of going back to where I began, it was mainly coarse fishing at the essence, but mainly predator fishing, and then the form of carp fishing overtook the predator fishing, which has changed somewhat in the last 5 years, but due to some different factors within the carp fishing scene. But that was the baseline where I came from.
We'll definitely get onto your predator fishing a little bit later on. I love the image of you with a picture of a fish stuck in your tackle box. That's very kind of traditional, I suppose. You remember people used to walk around with literally like a plastic wallet of photos of fish they wanted to catch before it was just all on your phone, ready to scroll through. I love that. Kind of maintain the focus, keep the target in the forefront of your mind.
Definitely.
You told me about a little trip down to Angler's Paradise.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. That is a great little story.
Okay, so there was actually two occasions where I went down. So it's a long way down Devon from the north of England. My grandparents lived in Plymouth, or a small town outside of Plymouth called Tavistock. So I was going down to Tavistock, and I found out that there was a fishery down there, and I'd watched Matt Hayes and all the other guys fishing this Angler's Paradise. So I was Zig Gregoret and all the rest of it, and so I decided to go on holiday there. Luckily, because I wasn't driving at this moment, me and my friend went down with my mum and her partner at the time, and we had one of these small cabins, and me and my friend's more of a salmon angler, so he's sort of mainly game fishing, and I was more coarse fishing. It has changed in recent years, but we had a list of species of fish that we'd never caught before, so we decided to target these certain species of fish like golden tench, catfish, and golden orf, and koi orf, and blue orf, and things like that, and we ticked the whole list off. We managed to. We were underage, but when you get a certain specimen at Angler's Paradise, you get given a bottle of wine, or you used to, and it was home brewed wine.
I think Zig's famous for his home brewed wine.
Yeah, and it was so strong. we were really young, but we were throwing it all night. So we were kind of given these wines to give to our parents, and we didn't. We snuck out and drunk them that night, but we were about 14, something like that. But we had an instance where we were fishing the easy access lake, and there was rumours of a huge catfish in there, and we'd fished the main lake, and we caught small kittens with worms and things, more carp than anything else. And we'd had fished the main lake and fished the Specimen lake, and the Specimen lake, Zig come down and said, "You're a bit young for this lake, you're going to really struggle on here," and we didn't, we did really well. I think I had a 29 and a good number of 20s, and some real nice fish as well. I actually lost the biggest fish in the lake right near the net, stalking off bread as well, but we won't talk about it. That was
painful.
Yeah, especially at that age, I was devastated. My first £30 had gone. It was one of those things. But anyway, back to the easy access lake. We went back to this easy access lake in search for this rumoured catfish. Now, it was snapping people off. People couldn't land this thing, so we had £20 braid, and we went out to purposely try and catch this fish. There was me and my friend, and there was two other guys, these two brothers that we met from Liverpool. And good friends with them, real good guys. One of them doesn't fish anymore, Tom, who caught it in the end. But we decided all of us were going to target this lake for the last day to try and catch this fish. So we baited an area heavily, and we all fished one rod to this area. So one of us was going to catch this fish, and that's what we thought anyway. And as it unfolded, the evening came along, and we did see big tail slaps around this area. So it was sort of educated guess that this thing was there. And my friend on the right hand side of the swim got the bite. He was only small at the time, and I mean he might have been 11 or 12. An hour into the fight, I got the rod, and my friend got the rod, and we were all heaving this thing in, and we managed to get it in, and I actually landed it as this guy sort of swam out to get the net under it, and we pulled this thing in, and it was amazing. Breathtaking, really. I think it was £44 at the time. We didn't have scales big enough. Anyway, put it that way. We just kept bottoming our scales out. We all have scales. And Zig came down, weighed it all, and we took the picture. I'm holding this tail, and he's holding the head, and he managed to get in the Liverpool Echo with this fish. So you could probably find it online somewhere. But he's sort of I forget what they called it, the beast of something or other anyway. But it dwarfed us both, this thing. It was only £44, but we were tiny, really. We were only young. And that sort of gave me an understanding that we could actually target certain species of fish and catch the biggest one in the lake with a short period of time, as long as the effort was on point. And I learned very quickly that could be achievable. It doesn't matter what people say. I heard it a lot when I was younger at Wyreside Lakes, where you won't catch anything in winter. I had more bites in the winter than I had in the summer. So I find that a lot in fishing, where people say certain things where it's not going to happen that. And a lot of people, like collective, will say that. And then you go against the grain and cause a ripple through time itself, because that's not what happens on that place. And we were told we wouldn't catch this big catfish, and we caught it. And that left something in my mind from a very young age, that things are achievable if you're willing to put that correct amount of effort into catching this thing. That was the story, the first story of Angler's Paradise. That was interesting, to say the least. We were very close to breaking the golden Tench record as well, but it was a few ounces under the record at the time.
Quite a big trip though. In the next break, Ian, Google Liverpool Echo. I want to see that big catfish in the Liverpool Echo. Yeah. So I suppose you've kind of gone through your apprenticeship as an angler. You've learned a lot of stuff. You've learned what tackle you need to target bigger fish, and you've learned that you can actually target those big fish by design, which back then wasn't probably that common knowledge. I wouldn't think 25 years ago.
Not at that age, anyway. I think when I grew up a little bit, you realise the likes of Terry Hearn and sort of Dave Lanes and all into the carp scene, so to speak. They were doing that at such a young age anyway, and targeting them. And it was only really when I still am quite dyslexic, so I struggled reading. I look at all the pictures in the books and read little bits of it, but really struggled to grasp it. So I didn't get the story behind it, how to do it. I couldn't understand reading. I could listen to it, or listen to a podcast or something. Nowadays is the best way, but especially young people who struggle with dyslexia, that don't necessarily, they would ignore books or magazines because they don't necessarily take it all in. We just look at the pictures and admire that, and think, how can we do that? How can we catch this thing? So it was more so that the application became the route to all success, really, because it was more that I would ask people, and I would take this information in from a very young age. So I would just be like a sponge walking around. I was so annoying. What have you caught, mister? What have you caught, mister? Just like, F off, I used to get it a lot where people just sat there like, you're keen young lad, aren't you? And I just
punishing them.
Yeah, punishing them, yeah. But that's the way we learn in life. I'm certainly people who don't read and write like I could. I can read and write, don't get me wrong, but I found it difficult. To take that in was very difficult for me. But to listen to somebody talking, it would be so much easier for me to learn that way. So I have a lot of credit goes to other people here in my development in angling at such a young age, and listening to certain people and even the negatives, and taking a positive out of the negative, even at such a young age, saying you won't catch this fish. And that's like a rag to a bull to me, because it's like, okay, let's go. I really want to do that now. And in life in general, I suppose it's almost the most challenging things in life are usually the most satisfying things. Maybe not so much when you're going through the pain, as you found out recently, yeah. But the achievement afterwards, the satisfaction that came from it, almost, it's not a word, but it almost, I could feel the emotion building and building and building, and then all of a sudden, there we go, finally, we've done it, we've succeeded in this. And that's what it's about. It's the thrill of the chase, really. Catching the fish is secondary to fishing, as we know, but a lot of people get obsessed with this catch, and this pressure to catch fish. I've never felt pressured to catch fish, even though I do put myself under a lot of pressure. I wouldn't feel that I have a weight on my shoulders to certainly catch fish. And in the last year or so, moving forward very quickly, having developed an autoimmune condition, it's been difficult, and I've had to realise that I've got to take a back burner here, because it means that if I'm going to go at it full pace, my health is going to suffer. So I'm almost having to wind myself back a little bit just to control my health, because health is wealth. If we can't do the things we want to do because of our health, we've got to concentrate on that first before our hobbies, because they are hobbies, even though we call them obsessions, and they can be at times, but they are hobbies at the root cause of it. So we can't control our life around our hobbies. There's occasional points in my life, and every fisherman's life, where we go through obsessions where nothing else matters. This is tunnel vision, and this is all it is in the world. And it isn't like that, even though we have to be like that in that moment in time to catch these certain fish. It's only a small snippet of life. So yeah, I've gallivanted away from the question there, James.
I think I want to go back to what you were saying about bothering people when you were younger. I think anglers have become quite insular, especially with more tech. I think a lot of carp anglers I see barely leave their bivvies on a weekend. They're sat there on their phone, and they're not taking in what's around them, and they're not talking to people. I spend most of my time, when I'm not actively fishing, just chatting to everyone I can find. Yeah, you might bother some people, but the amount of knowledge you gain from just walking around the lake and talking to people is infinitely more than I can gain from when I'm actually fishing, a lot of the time. Yeah. And I just don't think that... I think that aspect of fishing has been lost. I think that people aren't willing enough to just go out there and chat to people anymore.
Yeah, I get it on a few syndicates I was part of, and they just say, like the doors zipping down as you're walking around, and you think it's such a shame for the younger generation, and certainly the cost element to certain things now, they're outpriced. There's a local syndicate near me, and I won't mention it because it's not really my thing to mention, but they promised that they would keep the price under a certain threshold for younger people to get involved, and it's not stayed that way. It's gone through the roof, and it's like I would struggle to afford a ticket on there, and for me that's where I sort of grew up fishing. I've not mentioned the place. I'll mention its original name, which was called Jimmy's Lake. I won't go into depth of what it is now, but Jimmy's Lake was an old hovercraft lake that was right around the corner from my house, and it was strange because I fished it like at a very young age for tench, and there was a lot of tench in there, and float fishing, lift method and things like that. And I didn't, only occasionally I would do this, occasionally when I wouldn't be obsessed with the predators or the carp. and really enjoyed my fishing on there. And these carp seemed uncatchable at the time. I went back some years later after it got taken over, and I'd repeated the process of the 330s in 24 hours, and did it twice almost. It's the first time that had been done in the north, apparently, but I wasn't too sure about that. And I got to the point where fishing is very much a rich man's game now. We don't have to be that way. We could just go stalking with a rod and a reel and a loaf of bread, but it becomes very obsessive in you need this tackle, you need this bait, you need this application to catch fish. You really don't. Strip it back to its bare minimum and you can still catch as many fish. It's just the raw essence of watercraft is what it takes to catch a fish. I could walk around a lake with a single rod with a piece of bread or a chip, for example, a piece of potato that's not even used these days as bait, but look back 50 years and that's what they were all using on Redmire and things like that, potatoes out of the tin, and the raw sweet corn element, the basic stuff, 69p in the local shop, will catch you probably more fish than a bag of boilies from a specific company. Not all companies, mind, but certain companies have ethoses. This being one of them. It's a very good ethos. Dynamite have something that a lot of companies don't have, and that is basically from the root cause of everything. I call it. It's a company that offers everything, not just a specific boilie. They offer a whole range of products for every range of angling, and that's something that's important in fishing. It almost gets confused with certain aspects of. I won't mention companies' names, but they have certain people not working for the companies, more sponsored by the companies. And the bait is different to what they sell on the shelf. I've witnessed it in so many different walks of angling companies, and it's a shame because it's false advertising. Any other part of fishing or any other part of outside of fishing, it would be classed as fraud, but yet we accept it in angling in a way. I'm not willing to accept that, because it's not the reality of what it is. So when I got into bait development, this is another topic we're going to talk about in depth, I started to learn ingredients and what from a carp's perspective anyway, not a general fish perspective, but from a carp's perspective, what ingredients work better than others, and bulk ingredients. And a lot of companies use bulk ingredients. This not being one of them, hence why I'm singing its praises. Certain companies do, and unfortunately the carp will still eat it if it's put in the right place, but it will not create a feeding trigger. And that's important when a carp, certainly with limited time. If you come across carp and finding carp, it was my forte, it still is occasionally, but I'm more so with this condition, I'm struggling with the sight, as you can see with my eye. It's I've got to sort of do that while I'm climbing a tree and looking at certain things, otherwise I'm looking at a fish over there and over there at the same time. So it's it was more so that applying the bait to create a feeding trigger if they weren't feeding in that area, or waiting for a certain window to watch one drop down and pick a certain natural off the bottom, and then I would develop a certain bait around that natural it would eat. So yeah, I'm diverging a lot out of it, but it means that we are at the raw essence of fishing, that you don't have to have these all singing, all dancing ingredients just to catch a certain specific fish. It's all about application and location. For me, that's the most important thing. Like I said, a chip or a piece of bread in the right place will catch you more fish than spending £100 on the top boilie at the time from such and such a company. And unfortunately, that is kind of lost with technology, because there's a lot of videos out there promoting certain products that are not all that. It's just for finances and for sales, really. It's a shame, but that's the way it's gone. And I think the more we talk about that and the more we emphasise that, it's bringing out that we don't necessarily know what people are doing, that people don't have an interest in bait. They just buy a bag of bait and then chuck it in, thinking that I'm on this bait, I'm going to catch the fish. That in itself doesn't necessarily catch you more fish. And that's what people need to realise, especially the younger kids that are getting into the game, because they must be so confused. The amount of stuff that's out there, it's mind-boggling to even me, let alone these kids that are just getting into it. Certain companies don't help themselves. I'm not mentioning names because I know certain people personally, but they don't help themselves because it's all about marketing. And this product and that product and this, you need that, and it's very confusing.
So we're back from a quick comfort break. I've got a tea.
Quick recharge.
Feeling a bit refreshed, feeling a bit refreshed. So let's go back into your carp fishing journey. So when you start fishing down at Lynch Hill, what are you now, like 18, 19?
Yeah, 17, 18. That was the first season on there when I caught the bulb. The second year was all about Stoneacres. I'd forgot. They'd taken it over, a lovely couple called Dave and Julie, and they were living in a house, and basically the previous guy that run it, forgetting the guy's name, but he was a bit of a crook, and all the information of previous syndicate was lost with him. So I had my name down, obviously being a member before. I thought I would straight transaction, and they like, who are you, kind of thing. So I was like, I'm Jamie Robb, I really like a ticket. I had a ticket last year. And it's like, yeah, we're just sorting out the ticket. So I'd luckily had my money. It had gone up quite a bit. So I'd paid 220 quid for the first year. Then it went up to 450 quid. So I'd had me 220 quid there, and he said, well, it's not quite enough. So I was like, well, give me a week and I'll be back down with the rest of it. So yeah, that was the transition really from fully half north, half south to fully south. And yeah, committed pretty much every weekend to fishing Stoneacres, and what a learning curve it was. Boat work was, I'd used a boat on wire mainly for landing fish, so I did have a balance, I suppose, a bit of balance. That was it. Feature finding, things like that, where I thought I knew what I was finding with a marker float, and a lot of it when you cast in next to a float, allowing swing back and braided lines and pre-stretched lines and monofilaments all act differently. You get a crosswind in the element and it acts differently again. So you've got to add and take off and do certain things to a certain spot to hit a bucket lid or spot the sides of the table, let's say. So that was the steep learning curve the second year. Learning how to cast past 140 yards. Again, it was a big step up. We just used two grey spod rods and braided them up with whiplash and big leaders, and yeah, we were getting, the second bar was 167, so within a few trips we were hitting table size spots at that sort of range in crosswinds.
That's a long way.
Yeah.
That's a very long way. Yeah. I'm a specimen. If I fish over 70 yards, that's a long range fishing.
Yeah.
That's crazy of ranges.
We watched lads put rigs 200 yards on there. I've cast 190 before in flat calm conditions with a tiny little 10mm choddy and things like that, 5 ounce lead, and like you cracked off, like the noise that almost breaks the sound barrier because of the speed. So yeah, it was a steep learning curve. I did quite well that first year. I actually caught a few fish. Lost one of the better fish in the lake due to not having a motor on the boat. I couldn't afford it. It was all about fuel. That was it. All my money went on fuel and little bits of tackle, and that was it. Basically, at the end of the week, I was skint. So it was the 3.5 hour drive south and all the bits I could afford to start it. And then that went from a half an hour battle with a fish called Kevs, and I couldn't get close to it in a 20 mile an hour crosswind, and I kept trying and trying. I'm not the biggest guy, but I'm not very weak, and I just couldn't get near it because every time it come out of a weed bed it would be on the surface ready to net, but I couldn't get near it. So it was half an hour trying to battle this thing, and it came off in the end, and the rod just right out. And it would have been my first 40 at the time. It was definitely close, if not over. Big linear, one of the biggest fish in the lake at the moment. 54 pound, I think it's done now. But yeah, that was the smallest of the linears when I was on there. There was a number of other bigger linears in there. A fish that hadn't been caught in a number of years, a fish called Bungles, off one of the lads that was fishing on there, named after him. And it was the same size as the target fish, but a lot of people thought it was dead, but it was in there all right. It was 50 odd pound linear, scales as big as your hand. Incredible fish. And it became focused that there wasn't just one target fish here, there was two. So a lot of I would call them semi-professional anglers that were on there full time. The likes of Betteridge, Terry Hearn, and a few anglers like that calibre were fishing it hard. It didn't take Terry too long to catch Jocko. He caught it from a position which was the old pipe swim. And if you know any water going into it, it was an active working gravel pit at the time, and they were pumping silt out of the lake next door, so they could a cleaning pond basically into Stone Acres, and you'd just see this big white slick going out into the lake, and the carp would just react to it. So he optimised on that opportunity very quick. He caught 2 fish out of the lake, if I can remember, 2 of the bigger ones, and one of them was his target fish, Jocko. It made it look so easy, but he put a lot of effort into that. And from what I seen, I was only there briefly, and he was there a lot. And I thought, wow, he's really sort of made it look easier. Other lads, Miles Gibson, Scott Lloyd, a lot of lads that we sort of grew up together really on the lake. We homed our watercraft on the same venue. They were fishing like waters in Cheshire at the time, and I was sort of fishing Wyreside and things. So they were a little bit older than me, but similar age. So we got on like a house on fire. We were bouncing things off each other and learning at a fast pace. Without the technology, I'll have to say, it was all to do with raw watercraft. A feeling for spots, going out and looking at it, spending 4 hours trying to hit this H block. You finally get a rod on the H block and you go out and your rig would be tangled. So you'd like all that rigmarole. You would have left it in a normal fishing situation and blanked that weekend, and you wouldn't know why. Wound it in a bit, it's tangled, what a waste. But we could wind that rod in and re-get it out there. A lot of the time it was trying to develop certain things that would I was developing not rigs, but people use wafters a lot, and the word wafter gets used a lot in fishing these days. I was using a critically balanced rig. I wasn't using critically balanced baits, so I would put a piece of cork or a piece of foam on my rig and trim it down till the rig only just sank, and then I'd put my bait on. So drill a hole in the bait and then put the bait on. Most people think that is a wafter, but it's not. It acts similar to a wafter, but it makes the bait act exactly the same as all the other baits out there. When people use wafters out of a pot or something like that nowadays, it's all to do with the rig that it's put on, whether it reacts right or not. So it was a steep learning curve, but also the bait development side of it. At the time, I'll mention his name, Mike Wilmot. I'd left Wyreside. I joined a bait company it was his bait company, and real well-known bait company. And he took me on board where I was more sort of like the sponge of knowledge. I was just learning about this additive and that additive, and what would like levels of certain ingredients would cause certain things. There was a bait at the time. I'll mention it because it's well known. B5. B5 would catch anywhere I used it, and I mean everyone in the country who used that bait would catch on it anywhere. Right? For some reason, I couldn't catch on it in Stone Acres. I couldn't put my finger on why it was. And still to this day, I can't put my finger on it. We developed a bait. We removed the Robin Red out of it. We removed certain aspects of the Fruit Factor 6, certain ingredients that were known for this bait. This was the main bait that would catch the best, nicest fish in the country for multiple anglers. But I just couldn't get on with it for some reason. So we made a black bait. So it was the black version, and at the time I was witnessing certain things in the margins, so I would leave my rigs in the edge, and so if I've got a rig out in the pond with a certain bait on, I would leave it in the edge as well. Obviously I'd guard it so no birds could come along and eat me up bait, and it'd often be a blunt rig, so I'd just leave the bait on and just see what happened to that bait in that scenario. So I could almost watch that happening while I could vision what was going on out in the pond. Sometimes it was in a bucket if it was bird life in the margins and things, and obviously the naturals didn't come onto it as it did in the bucket, but we soon realised what the naturals preferred in ingredients and what they didn't. So certain times a year the caddis would all be on the bait, so you lift the bait out of the margins and it'd just be a ball of caddis, and that's after 6-7 hours, and then the other rig had had none on it. So it's almost like we soon learned what would work and what wouldn't for the naturals, and my approach went from thinking carp to what the naturals eat, and trying to develop my bait around the natural food, about what the snails and the shrimp eat, and like digestibilities. Now liquid attractors became a massive thing for me, like the hydrolysis, the oils, the oleoresins, the essential oils. They're so potent, so you have to be so careful of how much you put in them, because you can very easily overdo them. I remember Mike walking into a swim on Calf Bay, and I had some boilies on the bucket lid drying. I used to make bait on the bank and stuff. I didn't have time to make it during the week, so I just roll a few hook baits and stuff up on the bank, and he'd just, like me, he'd eat them. I just take a bite out of a bait nowadays, chew it up, spit it out if it's not very nice. But yeah, he just, what the, far too much in that, and it was black pepper. And I said, no, they're an instant thing. They're more of an instant attraction thing. The naturals don't go anywhere near it, but the fish kind of, what's that? You'd watch the response, watch the receptors almost as they're swimming past it, like all tense up. So they could sense it, even though they couldn't see it, they could sense it. And it was just the certain levels, so we managed to drop the levels slightly. And going from Stoneacres, I went onto a place, I'll call it guesting, because I don't want to put myself in any realms of criminality, so to speak. So I was guesting on this place that demanded so much effort. It was a place in the north. I won't mention the place, but there was a specific fish called Jim's at the time. It was a huge common, one of the biggest commons in the north. And I decided to move off Stoneacres to put this effort in to catch this fish. And I developed a bait specifically to catch that one fish. And my first bite out of the lake was that fish. People say that isn't possible, but it is. I design baits either to catch commons or mirrors, but people say, no, you can't do that. Well, you can. You've just got to know what the levels of ingredients are. Certain commons will pick up certain spicier baits, peppery baits. Mirrors prefer more fruity and sweet baits. You will catch on them. You'll catch mirrors and commons on all of them, but if you were to document it, write it down on what's happening, you would see there was a big difference in the catch rates. And so getting back to Stoneacres, it was this steep learning curve of bait development and the application of bait. So when you've got the realms of going out in the boat and actually placing your bait out there. At the time we were casting, so we weren't allowed to drop rigs. We changed the rules between the syndicate eventually because of the target fish choco was me and Miles found it dead. It got wrapped in someone's braid and they were using really thin braid, too thin really. I'm not going to mention the guy's name because it's not fair really, but it's not fish at all costs. That's kind of what it was in that realm, and it was just too light a braid for the situation, fishing for a 50-pounder. And he fortunately got cut off on the bar, fishing over the bars, and this fish had got wrapped up in a weed bed and there was no more. It never got found, but me and Miles seen it on the bottom, and it was definitely that fish. The size of it, length of it, and it took the sail, took the wind out of our sails, because we were targeting, me and Miles were both targeting this fish. Miles probably would have caught it before me because he had more time. He's a better angler than me because of that. It's all about time on the bank, time and access with fishing. I found that if we've got unlimited time, we'd all be fantastic anglers, and it's all about time and access really, the grand scheme of it. But it kind of took the wind out of our sails really. There was another fish in there called Bite Mark. At this moment in time, the linear had gone as well, the bungles that had gone. And it was becoming, I think I had 11 fish that year out of Stoneacres. That was my best year on there, which was probably out of 80 fish, fishing weekends, was good going. But at the time, I decided for some reason to take over the calf at Lynch Hill. So me and my friend ran the cafe there for a full 12 months. And so I didn't have a single day off for 12 months. I was landscaping and building during the week. Friday had come, we would drive down Oxford, 6 o'clock in the morning, go to the Bookers, and we'd open a cafe. And we were running the Lynch Hill calf.
So what? Why did that? How or why did that happen? Now it's really thrown me. So you're fishing. You're fishing for these big target fish every weekend, and suddenly you go, no, I won't spend my weekends fishing. I'll actually run the calf instead. How does that start happening?
It was at the time where obviously that women and other things get involved in your life, and I thought, that they're kind of pulling away from your passions and, the start of the family scenario, and it was almost I wasn't ready for that. And I kind of thought, well, if I've got business, I've got an excuse to be there every weekend. That was what I thought, It didn't end up that way because I didn't catch anything for the full 12 months. Not a fish, right? As soon as I stopped the calf, that weekend I caught 3. Just like that whole process of winding in the morning, having to get the rods back out, and then winding in for tea time. And the plan was, we had a business plan to do linear as well. It wasn't just Lynch Hill, there was a business plan behind it, and the base was Lynch Hill. There's a long story behind that with Roy Parsons, who's I won't call him what he deserves, so to speak. But yeah, we didn't get on after that. And he was Lynch Hill scum and all the rest of it. And his bailiffs had copied our menus and our ideas, and they got a small wagon and like a small food wagon and set this food wagon up. And after I'd seen that happening, I thought, we really needed that. Linear to make it a successful business, and it just dwindled away from my interest then. And I thought, what, this isn't for me now, because I'm just working for wages. It's not about that in business. You've got to develop a business to create something in the future, not just work for wages, because you might as well work for someone if that's the case, and all this stress on your life and all the time that it takes to develop something. So yeah, for a full season we were blinkers on, thinking, yeah, this is it, we're going to catch them all, and didn't catch a thing. A strange moment in life, I suppose, where you realise that it's not just about being there, it's about the rods in the water for a certain amount of time and not spooking them. And this moment, the cafe, it didn't fail, but I decided to throw the towel in, and they took it over. Julie took it over and run the small business herself, and made a real success of it. Like for her, because she lived in the house, and a woman's touch made a big difference. Me and my old mate, who was like a bit of a rough, ready guy, I love him to bits, Graham, but we didn't look the part, so to speak. Cooking sausages and all the rest of it, but it was an interesting time of my life, put it that way. But we went from that point where we decided, because of what happened to Choco, we got together as a collective and we decided to drop rigs. Whether it was a good move or not, I don't know. I've known lads that have been on there. Close friend Robbie, he sort of said, I wish I'd have fished it back when you fished it, because of the development in angling that, the likes of Miles, the likes of Scott, that they developed their their craft doing that. Now, if you can just go and drop a rig into the pond, you're not developing your casting, you're not learning the pull and the feel and the drop and how much you need to. So when you go away from that, you don't get anything from it. You lose all your edge. So there was lads that dropped straight away, and there was lads that carried on. I carried on for one more season, and yeah, I caught fish. I actually caught. So Choco had gone, and I really wanted to catch baby Choco. That became a bit of an obsession for me. It's mad how it all unfolded, because the story. So I was in a swim in front of the house, and I just wasn't feeling it. Even though the fish were there, I just thought, they're not big. There's fish there, but they're not big fish. They've got to be somewhere, right? So I wound in, packed up what I thought was everything, right? And it wasn't. I got real telling off for this. I nearly got banned. Now, I had a rod, so 4th rod. I had a rod down in trees at the bottom, so the swim's sort of up like that, and I had 3 rods at the top. So I went for a walk, wound these rods in, packed all my gear up, whacked it in the car, went for a walk, forgot about this one rod. Blatantly, obviously forgot about it, because I was just in this moment of like, I've got to find. And I'd found a group of fish, and Kev's jumped out, and I'm thinking, right, that's one of the big ones. Usually baby Choco's around that fish or not far away from it. And I knew roughly where they were. There was a big silt channel and a big gravel area to one side of them, and it was right down the other end of the pond. So I'd legged it back to the car, literally drove the car right back round. All this time this rod's still fishing. A guy called Sean Leverett, nice guy, I get on with Sean. He was a bailiff at the time with Johnny Mack, and he had moved in behind me, and at this moment in time found my rod. News to me, because I was out in the boat dropping my rigs, on this new spot, and seen where they just ripped it up, and I'm having one of these big ones. So I'd just gone and dropped 3 rods out there. I went to get my 4th rod. Where's it at? Oh, no. I was like, oh my God. But all the effort involved. Stoneacres was one of them things, right? I know it's breaking the rules, so to speak, in angling when you're off your rods for a certain period, but it was normal on there. It's strange, still is to this day, I suppose. The year you went round there, they'd be catching people left, right and centre. Don't go down there, but that whole point of people sat in the same swim barbecuing and all the rest of it, and it would be like everyone all over the lake. Back in the day when we couldn't afford receivers, we'd just turn the alarms round. So you'd see the light on the other side of the lake. You couldn't hear it, but it was like if it stayed on, that was it. You had to run. Bad angling, really bad angling. I would never have vouched for it. But this moment in time where it was kind of people turned a blind eye to it, but it wasn't a blind eye really, because in this situation I'd done wrong. So I'd left the 3 rods that I positioned out there with my friend Richie, and he was fishing the next swim. And I felt that was okay. I'd had to go and get this rod, or Sean had this rod, and apparently I had a run on this rod, and it was he broke the line, and it was £20 fluorocarbon. I'm like, you can't just break that line. I don't know what had gone on, and he was effing and jeffing at me, and Julie was there, and she said, well, this is a bannable offence, and I was pleading with her. I said, honestly, Julie, I really did not know. I said it was one of these moments where I had to hold my hand up, I'm really sorry, I can't get banned surely for it, we've known each other for years, it's a genuine mistake, a bad one to make as well, tunnel vision almost to catching these certain fish, and she didn't ban me, she warned me. Sean wanted me off, right? Anyway, back to, God, this rod walked back to me. I was like, Richie, you never guess I nearly got banned and all that. He was laughing, but he's one of the anglers that, he doesn't publicise anything, little Richie. He's well known in carp fishing. He's probably like the Terry Earn of the underground. So yeah, if they were only on the mere, like we would go on Raisbury, leave all that gear out, like if only if they'd have known. Anyway, he packed up. When I got round, it was his time to go on the Sunday. I managed to get an extra night in because of what was going on. And from that moment, I knew it was going to happen. I sat down, it was 9:30 at night, going dark, and I knew it was the night. It was going to happen, and it happened. Now, it didn't happen on the rod I thought it was going to happen, because I dropped the rod in the silt on a multi-rig white pop-up, which was the go-to on there for some reason. 2 kilo bait. And that was going to be the rod, and I dropped a rod on a single just on the side of this gravel bar, and it was a really heavy bottom bait that was 22mm, that was chopped down a little bit black. You could hardly see it on the gravel. It was these out of the way kind of rod, and that was a rod that went, and it was Baby Choco, and it was the first time it had done 40. Well, the only other person on the lake was Sean. And this is 10 o'clock at night, or 10:30 at night. So I've walked round, I've got my other 2 rods out, fair be it. He was the only other person on the lake, and I said, Sean, I've got Baby Choco. It's the first time it's done 40, I need pictures, mate. And he's looked at his rods, and I went, Stoneacres. And he's just gone, yeah, you might, mate, grabbed his camera and come round, take pictures. And I just thought, wow, how condescending. Leaving his gear out while he's, other side of the lake. So that was how it was accepted back then. And I got pictures done, and I thought, how come I've not caught Kevs? Because Kevs was showing profusely on this silt spot, and I'd gone out the following day just to see, because I left this one rod out, the other rod was away from the area. Obviously caught Baby Choco on my left hand rod. The middle rod, that was the banker rod, I thought. I'd gone back to the spot and it was trashed, absolutely trashed. My rig was thrown in the weed, and they devoured it, bowled it out almost in the silt. And that was a big learning curve for silt fishing, but I'll go into that in more depth at another point. But the whole story behind it, I'd achieved the goal, but I'd almost knocked a big chip off my shoulder in that respect to do it. And I thought, this is a bit too much, all this. I heard rumours that they didn't want me on, and it was becoming a bit, not like what it used to be on there. And I stumbled across a water that was in the north-ish. And it was a friend of mine, Charlie, that had said, have you ever found out about this place? And I'll name it the Dark Park. And that became the new obsession, because it was a lot closer, for one, but it was almost the unknown. So the unknown, we didn't know what the biggest fish in the lake was. I'd been told that there was big fish in there, and I went down there for the first trip and seen 2 of what I thought were the big fish, and they didn't turn out to be the big fish, but they were both 40-pounders, and it was literally walked onto the steps, and there they were. First fish I seen, a huge big mirror and a big common, covered in scales, and I'm just like, oh, I want a bit of this. Bumped into another lad. He said, "Oh, this is corker, and this is such and such, and that's the wood." And I started sort of learning a bit. I'm very good friends with this guy now, Rob, and he was the first sort of person I met. So the very next weekend I was down there. I forgot about Stoneacres in a heartbeat almost, and it became the new obsession. So I'd got down there within 10 minutes. I'd caught a fish straight away within 10 minutes. A mega mirror. It was only mid-20s, but mega scaly mirror. It was the closing chapter of Stoneacres, so to speak, and the new chapter begun of the Dark Park. Probably leave it there.
So you fished a few seasons on Stoneacres.
Yes.
Now Lynch Hill was not only known for its carp back in the day, it was known for very big fish of other species. So did you come across any of those while you were fishing?
I did, yes. Not intendedly though, I have to say. Sometimes it's people sort of claim these fish as like their PBs as such. I don't. I've caught some really big specimens. I actually caught one of the bream. I caught 3 in one night. Biggest was 18. 4, I remember 18.4, yeah, 17, 12 and 16.8. One rod, fishing for bite mark. I actually caught a carp that following morning, which was the ghosty, and they used to swim together. So I'd had 3 bream and the ghosty, 34 if I remember correctly. The bream had a black eye, like a black mark on its eye. And this fish went on to do the British record the previous year. I think it was £20.4 or something. And that record stood for 2 weeks, and it got beaten by a guy carp fishing another lake in Cambridge. So I think that's still the record to this day in Ferry Lagoon. So yeah, I came across the bream a couple of times. Didn't catch anything that big, but yeah, caught some decent tench as well. 4 doubles, if I remember right. 11.4 was my biggest, 11.6. I did get a picture of the bream on the mat, and I did get a picture of the biggest tench. It was actually on a tiger nut, the tench. Probably the only tench I've caught on a tiger nut, really. And also the fish in the other lakes, the roach and the rudd and things. I spent a bit of time fishing willow, as we just talked, for carp and for the roach, and I always caught them on my bloody cart rods. So I'd have 2 cart rods out and a roach rod, or I'd have 2 roach rods out and a cart rod, being carp obsessed, and it would always be the cart rod that would produce the roach. And I would never figure out why, and I couldn't claim that as my biggest roach. I had a 3.5 pounder, and my biggest roach caught by design is 213, so I couldn't claim that as my biggest roach. I did catch some big rudd out of there as well by design. Not on light gear though. I didn't have any light gear with me at the time, but there was a stalking opportunity for one of the biggest carp in the lake, and there was some huge rudd in there. The carp just got put to the side, and I downsized the hook to size 8, the smallest hook that I had in my box, and big bunch of maggots, and just literally held it there, and the rudd took it. And it was the smallest rudd in the shoal, and that was 3.5. Something like that. Oh, they would have been over the British record, yeah. No one really knew about the rudd in there. It was really known for the roach, but there was only 2 handfuls of them in there. And you used to see them around the aquarium end. There was like a big snag tree that you could get off. You'll probably know it. And there was like a big point swim at the other end, and they'd always link around this end. So people didn't really fish that area unless they were carp fishing. So yeah, the odd one got caught by design, but mainly the roach. I think it did a couple of 4-pounders roach wise back then. It did have some big eels in as well, but that soon sort of dwindled because for some reason there was catfish put in there, and they devastated the roach stocks and ruined the whole roach syndicate in the winter, which was a crying shame really, because they would have done the British record, I was convinced. And maybe if I'd have put a bit more effort in, maybe that might have been the one really, but it was more obsessed with the carp. I caught some lovely carp out of there as well for winter fishing. It was it was nice, but for the specimen side of things, I didn't do much specimen fishing back then. I do more now, but they were not caught by design. Like I say, it was more caught by mistake. Even though I got the odd picture of them, they didn't really mean as much if you were to put the effort in like you do yourself and go and target these species. And I didn't feel it right to say that's my PB in that respect. And I also caught a very big pike. I say very big, not big to what we're used to now, but back then it was a 28 pounder. I spent 4 hours getting this rig on the spot, and like I said, 267 yards this second bar. I didn't get a drop. Right next to the H block, perfect cast. Didn't get a drop. I was like, well, it's on the money. It's got to be. Got to check it. Put the rod down, slacken the braid off, and the braid just kept tightening up. I'm like, slacken it off again. It was tightening up. I was like, it took a while to compute. I was taking that much light. I've got to, and this. Oh, it's got one on. I thought it can't be a carp, but it was fighting like a carp, and it was heavy. And I'm thinking, next minute this thing started tail walking 30 yards out, 28-14, I think it was. That stayed my PB pike for a while until I dedicated a lot more time to predator fishing.
So when you were on Lynch Hill, I think there's certainly been some good specimen anglers fish that place over the years. I think Di Gribble.
Yeah, Di was on there when I was on there.
Oh, okay, that's what I was going to ask. I was wondering whether there was any specimen anglers fishing in those lakes at that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know Di well. Yeah, he was fishing there for the Tench and the bream, like Frogger. He was fishing there for he actually caught the British record bream that stood for 2 weeks. His moment of fame, and then to be beaten by a carp angler was just salt in his wound. I think he took up golf. One of the lads will always take a golf club in his bag and just pretend to swing at him from the other side.
Amazing.
Yeah, but there was a handful of specimen guys there who were fishing for the special fish, but outside of the carp. A lot of the carp anglers didn't really talk to them, but I talked to anyone. And Di was a right nice guy, real clever angler where he thought about things. I'm sure he would have taken it to bits if he really concentrated on the carp, but he was more interested in the bream and tench. I think he had a couple of, I think it was 12 pound tench and like I say 18 pound bream maybe, but never caught the real like records. But there was a handful of guys that kind of got left alone really, but good guys.
So when you were fishing Willow, was it just carp anglers surrounded by roach fishermen and you were just fishing side by side back then in the winter?
Kind of. There was a roach syndicate, so there was people specifically fishing for the roach, but for me it was just the extra rod really, or I'd have 2 rods for the roach and then 1 rod for the carp. But I didn't really, it was only the last season really where I dedicated a bit more time to fishing for it, and when I had the 3.5 on the carp gear, it was like, just stop putting the carp rods out. You might actually catch one. I never did. I had a couple of 2-pounders on the roach gear, but never. Yeah, and they were in decline by then. It was very low stocks, and I thought, probably be better just calling this a day and moving on. And I did really moved on from that side of things. And I'd actually bought 2 feeder rods just to fish with the roach there. I still got them actually. I've not used them. I think barbel fishing was the last time I used them on the Trent, but it's something that I'm going to get into a bit more, I think, as I get older. And if this condition carries on, then I'm not going to be able to spot the carp as well, so maybe I could spot a few roach instead.
Do you think when you were catching those big roach on the carp rods, do you think that was coincidence, or do you think there was something in that?
Boilies. Yeah. And it's strange really, because the feeders and light setups and things, you'd think I'd put a little boilie on the light feeder. You could cook a carp on it, just smash you up. So you're like, I can't do that. So you've just got to go back to the maggot and things like that, and the caster and the emp, and it just didn't produce the bigger fish, because the reason why they were so big is because of the boilies. So it was a shame really. There was a lot of big roach. I think there was a roach over the record caught by a carp angler that didn't count it. Certainly over 4. And there was more than 1. And it was a shame really. A big size 6 hook in the lip of a roach like that is not the best. I don't think they lasted too long with that. But anything big eats boilies, doesn't it? I suppose becomes the food source of them. Same the reason in Brasnose now. It's the reason why the roach are so big is because of the carp baits. I nearly went and had a dabble on there, and Dan's had a dabble this year, and he's caught a big one.
Yeah.
I've been keeping an eye on things, but it's just not for me. Yeah, not really for me. I'd rather stumble across somewhere that's not known about and then do my own thing instead of following people around. It's not really my thing.
We talked a little bit around, you focused on the carping, you kind of diversified into the roach, catching the bream and the tench, sort of somewhat by design, sometimes by accident.
By mistake.
Yeah, by mistake. Yeah. So I think a lot of specimen anglers can probably relate to this. It's one of the banes of my life hearing what all the carp hangers around me are catching when I'm struggling to target those fish. So what other giants of other species have turned up along your journeys?
Perch, but they were more predator fishing in a way, or stumbling across them while I was carp fishing probably. Eels as well, not monsters, but certainly over £6. So yeah, they were a bit of a surprise. Also pike on the tigers again, sort of £28 and up to the scissors, double tagging up off the cast that I told you about. Sort of other fish. Think really.
You've had some big tench, haven't you, on the carp gear?
Yeah, very big tench. It's a bit embarrassing really this moment because I was guesting on a water that I still fish now, and it's thrown up some really big tench in recent years. Certainly fish up to £15. I've spotted 3 fish around that weight, and I caught one of them. At the time, I didn't weigh the fish. I wish I did. Deep down, I really wish I did now. Big mistake in my fishing. When you're not specifically fishing for a fish like that, it kind of takes the glory away from somebody that does. So it's my own fault really. But I would say it was in between 14 or 15.
That's enormous. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Knowing the fish that are in the lake and knowing the one that got caught at 15, it wasn't that one, but it was certainly one of the 3 that was, definitely one of the 3. I know another lad that caught one of them that wasn't that fish and wasn't the fish that I caught, and it was 14. So all 3 of them are over 14. And you'll be fishing for it very shortly, no doubt.
You're going to give it a go?
Yes.
And that lake has legitimately produced tench verified over £15, hasn't it? So.
Yes. Yeah. It's Jurassic Park, as like we call it. It is phenomenal. The place I've never fished anywhere with naturals like it. Phenomenal. It's almost. It's a river that flows through it, and that principle of continuous cycle, it can obviously have the opposite effect. If there is a pollutant in the river, it could kill everything. So it is, touch wood, we're almost we're at the continuous cycle part where the naturals you'll soon work out. It's just you can't compete with them. It is phenomenal. Yeah, the Daphnia is acres and acres of Daphnia swarms that flow down the lake as pink clouds that are just mind-blowing really. And people think, it's pollutants going down the lake, and when you take a close look at it you realise it's just a big pink Daphnia swarm, and I'm talking 2 or 3 acres worth of Daphnia down the middle. Yeah, it's phenomenal. Yeah, it's crazy really, and no wonder the fish are so big in there. Every species of fish, I'm talking like bream, tench, perch, roach, pike, carp, everything's phenomenal. No doubt we'll be getting deeply involved with that in the next coming months.
I hope so. I mean, you're one of the few carp anglers who I actually trust with the weights of other fish species. I think I've spent a lot of my time now filtering through the rubbish, shall we say. I think it's actually quite staggering how many carp anglers claim big fish of other species without ever actually having weighed them. And I think I've pretty much stopped believing 99% of what I hear now, because I don't think many carpers really appreciate how big, a tench of £10 or a bream of £15 is until they see one on the mat. And it's frustrating at times.
I can totally get that. It's just as frustrating for us sometimes to catch them, because I mean a lot of people they don't do them justice. They sort of up them in the water and turn them around and sort of send them on the way. And I do get that argument there, and hence why I don't sort of class them as a PB, even though they're the biggest fish that I've caught in that species. It's not by design, and I think you've got to catch them by design to class them as a personal best. But yeah, so I've caught some really big other species, shall we say, while fishing for other species. Yes.
Speaking of which, let's move on to the predator fishing, your other main passion.
It's become probably my main passion, really. Carp fishing is seasonal. I used to love carp fishing through the winter, but life's too short. So, yeah, and especially on these kind of waters. I mean, there's little windows, and it's all about, certainly in the carp fishing side of it, these small windows in the winter that you've got to optimise on, and not having that much time. I decided to concentrate trying to catch a 30-pound pike. Caught quite a lot of 20s over the years. Took a while to get my first 20, and then I started catching quite a few after that moment. And then it was the focus to try and catch a 30-pounder. So yeah, that began in the lakes, sort of as I was growing up, developing a bit of watercraft around the pike fishing, and having close friends that's all they did. They didn't do anything else but pike fishing. And my close friend Mick Gardner and John Rushforth, they were both hardcore pike anglers, and he taught me an awful lot. More so Mick than John, really. Mick is you won't have heard of Mick, but he's not caught many big fish. He's not had a 30-pounder, but he's caught probably more 20s than most. And his knowledge on pike fishing is phenomenal. He doesn't write anything down. It's all in his head, and it's all stories. And fished with every one of the top pikers on the natural waters, because we all thought it was wrong to catch a pike out of a trout water. How wrong we were. We thought it's Okaduck, it's going to be easy, this scenario, and it's the opposite. It becomes, there's more of them, so you've got more chance of catching them, but it's a lot harder than what I personally thought. I fished on a water called Eswaite, which is right near, sort of in between Windermere and Coniston. At the time, it was declining. Basically the be all and end all of it was they stopped stocking rainbow trout. And they were only allowed to stock brown trout because people were pinching the live baits and taking them onto Windermere. And the amount of big pike that got caught on them was phenomenal, even on Windermere 40s. And I only got to know about these later on in life when Mick trusted me with information. Sorry, Mick. But yeah, it's long gone that now. It's turned into a coarse water. And there's still some big fish in Windy and then waters, but at the time there was a number of 30s in there still in Eswaite, and I decided to put a bit of effort in to try and catch one of these fish. It didn't happen though. I caught quite a few 20s up to like 27, and doing nights and using fresh baits and trying all sorts to try and to fishing out of range, no bait boats, but I'd hire a boat and then I would go and find a feature with my marker float. Didn't have an echo sound, I couldn't afford one, and basically find a float and marker it up and then just go out and drop my dead bait next to the marker and then bring it in and wind my marker and find the next rod. And I thought that was the place I was going to do it. I had 8 20s that year. So first
great
year,
fishing.
Yeah, it was brilliant fishing. Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of upper doubles as well, and a lot of jacks. But we won't mention the peskies. They're a vein in my life at times. But it became this thought that where can I get a 30 from? This is like, I'm going to have to look further afield. So we're on the technology era now, aren't we? So we can look on the computer, we can look on the internet, and we're finding pictures. I stumbled across 2 waters in particular. I'll mention them because it's not secret anymore. One of them was Ravensthorpe and one of them was Pitsford. Both in Northampton, so a fair drive for me, but I was used to the drive. It's funny, it's where we met originally on Ravensthorpe. Poor breaker of a water, really tough water. A lot of trout, a lot of roach. Trying to get into the swing of things on there was a steep learning curve for me. Basically, what happened was, John won't mind me saying this, but John had he's got Crohn's disease, and basically he was on some medication. This new trial of medication, it gave him cancer, throat cancer, and he was in hospital. He looked like he was dying. I took him a book, which was a fishing book, Mike Wilmot's book or something that he could read, and he passed me this pike book, and it was Chew Monsters or something like that. He was big in pike fishing, and he said, "Oh, swap your book for book. I'm sick of this, a bit of carp fishing. Read this." And it made me think about. I thought, if you recover, I'm going to book us on Chew because he'd never been, and I'm going to book us on somewhere else. And Ravensthorpe was the second option. So we had a day on Chew and a day on Ravensthorpe. He recovered, they did wonders for him in hospital, and he recovered. So we went for a day on Chew. We didn't catch anything on Chew. We were very close to catching a couple of decent ones, but we never did. And the following day was on Ravensthorpe. So the mission for a 30-pounder, we called it. what happened, John had a 21 pounder. We don't fish in the same boat now. We don't argue, but we have disagreements, that's how we say. And so we both got the same boat, and we came to an agreement that John's fished John's spot in the morning and my spot in the afternoon, so my choice of spot. And the weather got bad in the afternoon, and we went to my sort of spot, the area around near the island of Ravensthorpe, and there's a drop off there that's sort of about 15, 16 foot. It's an area now I know that they actually spawn along that margin, that tree line margin. So I didn't know this at the time, but they were grouping up there to get ready for spawning, and it was about February time. And John caught a 30 pounder. So we weren't there long. I remember the video, he videoed me up and down in the boat. Whose idea was it to come over here? And it was just like, mine. That's, obviously, there's only one idiot at the front of the boat. Well, anyways, his rod went, and it was 31.4, I think it was. Well, at the time, I hadn't worked the following day, and John hadn't worked the following day, and it was basically there's a guy there called Simon, who was the ranger there. I'm really good friends with Simon. He's one of my best friends now. I didn't really know Simon at the time, and I said to Simon, is there any chance we can get on tomorrow? And he said, yeah, there's boats available. So we decided to stay at the hotel and go back to Ravensthorpe the following day. I was physically shattered doing all the driving and things, and John, I remember him tying rigs as I was falling asleep on the bed, and he was, I thought, you've already done it, a few rigs for me there. And he used to use the Eagle Claw. I used to rusty gaffs, they were the worst hooks on the market, but they worked for him. It's we use different gear now, but they worked for him back then. And we got back on the same spot. There was quite a famous pike angler called Derek MacDonald who was very close to beating us to this area, but he had a problem with his motor. Goodness, really, and he couldn't get it going, and we straight to the spot, and we got out there, and it's flat calm, and I remember the sun coming up over the same area, and John put a rod on where he caught this 30 from on fresh mackerel, same again, fresh mackerel on the same area, and it was an hour, maybe not an hour, 45 minutes. He had a slow take, and bearing in mind we were ledgering, we weren't float fishing, so we were using braid. So we had enough line looped off the end of the rod, so when the boat moved, obviously you're double anchored, so you've got an anchor at the back, anchor at the front, and you're not swinging round, but there's a little bit of movement, but there's just leave enough loop, so you basically, as you move, your lines move. So one changes if you've got a bite, it stays tight when it's meant to go slack, so straight away. And he picked up this rod, there's a fish on this, and I remember the sort of mud anchor moving as he sort of bent into this thing, and it sort of started going, and it's 10 minutes into the fight, still not seen it, and it had come up, and he said, whatever you do, don't miss it. I said, I've not in a million years I was missing this fish, and it came up for net, and I've got the net under it, and we were both blown away by it. Still to this day, I've caught fish similar size now, but it was 40 pound 4. So he caught a 30 the first day, his first 30, and then he jumped the gun and caught a 40 the second day. Mind blowing. Took it to the bank. Simon had come over with waders, helped us out weighing it all on the bank, and took pictures. It was just one of those days where it was just magic, and we were both sat there like Cheshire cats. Went back out there. John was like, you can put a rod there now, it's your turn. So I'd wound a rod in from sort of towards the building. He'd sort of chucked his rod towards the building. I put the rod on the banker spot where I thought, and his rod was away again, 10 minutes after anchoring up. And I'd had a pickup on that rod when I'd wound it in, and when I'd looked at my baits, I'd had a pickup but not realised. Big teeth marks, big jaw marks, obviously a big fish. If I'd have noticed it sooner, I'd have probably not put one where he'd had his 40, I'd have chucked it back there, but he had a 36.8 for the next bite. So he kind of didn't write pike fishing history, but he certainly anchored himself in pike fishing history as we know it. I think the second or third biggest brace outside of Chew and Blagden, so to speak, because they're a bit freaks really. There's been some phenomenal braces that people don't know about out of Blagden, certainly, fish of 48 and 47 and things like that in the same day. It's like same boat. Can't class them as British records because they've got to publicise them, so it's outside of that realm. So in the circles that we know about, it was like the third biggest brace in pike fishing history, I think. I just thought, well, this is easy. I blanked, yeah, and this was at the end of the season. I think we had one more day, we couldn't make it. There was a 44 out the following day. So we might have caught that if we could have been there the following day, but we never did. So the following year, I decided this is it. This is the water where I need to be, where I'll dedicate every weekend I can to fishing Ravensthorpe. And I fish every weekend a lot of the time back then. I don't so much now, it's every other weekend, but it was every weekend, and I decided to do one day on Ravensthorpe and one day on Pitsford. So I'd have a day on the boat and a day on the bank. And on Pitsford on the bank and Ravensthorpe on the boat, just to break it up a bit. If the weather was bad, it wasn't 2 days boat fishing, because it's harsh, isn't it, when you've been in bad weather.
It's brutal. It is horrendous out there sometimes. Yeah.
So I did 13 blank days in a row and didn't catch a single pike. I think I had one jack actually that jumped off. They didn't land it, so it didn't count.
Fishing between the both reservoirs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, this was just on Ravensthorpe.
13 back days on Ravensthorpe.
Yeah, just on Ravensthorpe. I got to my last day, and what it was cancelled. There was a day that was cancelled because of bad weather, and the weather was really bad, and it nearly got cancelled. But they added this extra day on, and I thought, brilliant, this is fantastic. I'm down fishing Pitsford the day before. I'll come back for this day. Well, it was strange because the trip before, it was almost back then. Now it's weekends. Or it used to, before it changed. It was the weekends was only, but there was like 14 days that you could fish in a row. So it was like there was one extra day added onto it. So I'd fished the last day, and I had this extra day. So I was like, oh, didn't catch anything. But on the last day, or the so-called last day, I wound in my bait, and an upper 20 followed me mackerel back in. And I was like, oh, right at the last knockings, knowing that I needed lures, and I'd left my lures at home. 3.5 hour drive home was in order to get my lures. So I drove the 3.5 hours back home, shattered after the day's pike fishing on there. Drove back in the morning, so like 7 hours round trip. Got there and set off fishing the same area where I had to follow, nothing. Got really frustrated because the wind got that hard, that heavy. A lot of people went. John stayed, Derek stayed. There was another boat that stayed, and they were all lingered down there where you had your 28 from the near the building, near the boat launch. And I sort of crept in between everyone, knowing my mate John, and Derek, and he was like, "Oh, you're a bit close," and I was like, can't go anywhere else, I can't stay out, I can't even hold anchor out there. It was 45 mile an hour crosswinds, and it's brutal on there when the winds get you. You can't even hold anchor. Angling waters have a thing where it's usually 45 mile an hour cut-off point, so we were right on the cut-off point, and the anchors are designed to open up in the wind so they don't drag you down, sink the vessel, so to speak. And so I sort of snuck in between these guys and started casting my lure about, and a bit half-assed really, where I was soaking wet. I'd been hammering it down all morning. I remember texting John just as a sort of anchor up, "Do you fancy the afternoon on Pitsford, mate? Crap on here, innit?" And he just put 3 laughing faces back. So I just sort of chucked my lure to the side, let it hit the bottom, slowly sinking it. I have a certain stinger pattern that I use on a line through that's slightly different to normal people how they rig it up. I'll show you that separately, but it's so the bait can still swim. A lot of the stingers that are on these baits, they stop them from swimming. So I designed this slightly different stinger, and I took this thing out, and the stinger hook got weed. So I'm like, well, it was interesting. Bit of weed down there, like 2 foot long, bit of Canadian. And so I thought, second cast in order out that way. So a bit more effort, past the weed, let it sink to the bottom. Sort of brought it second while it snagged. Well, what I thought was a snag. It didn't bite, it was just a snag. So I'm pulling this rod's act right over, and it was a snag. That was all the thing that was in my mind. There was no resistance, no anything from a fish until I seen it. And even when I seen it, it was like a log rising in the water. No movement, it was just rising until it got about 5 foot to the surface, where I realised what it was. And it was a huge pike. Didn't see the lure, and it was in its mouth, and this thing came up to the surface shaking its head like it was going crazy, and it tail walked right next to the boat, and as it tail walked, the line through flew up the trace, so I thought I'd lost it. Like, and bang, straight back into it, and not giving it any line, so it was just solid. And sort of, as it turned and its head was facing away from me, I netted it backwards. And as it tail walked, it just went into the net. So I slumped back down into the boat and sort of looked at this thing and just sort of was just, done it. I've done it. Finally done it. After all that effort and all that pain and hardship of fishing the place, you know exactly what it's like. It's a ball breaker of a water, and that's at its best times. So 13 blank days to this one day, the last day that had been added on to the days. And I thought, it's a 30. That's all I thought. Looked over the side of the boat and sort of went, ugh, kind of like, that's a big 30. Kind of scared myself in a way. Not scared, but just like, that was not what I was expecting to look at, kind of thing. And phone John, I've done it, mate, that's all I remember saying. He's like, oh, so he's wound up, packed up, come round, chug round. And he's pulled up to the side of the boat, and he said, oh, you know, I said it's a 30, definitely. I know it's a 30, but I don't know how big it is. As I've gone to lift it, you know, double take kind of lift, swung it into the boat, and it's just gone, I don't know about a 30, I think you've got 40. I don't want a 40, I just wanted 30, mate, and I wanted to skip the 30 mark. Well, it went 39.8 on the scales. Blew us away, really, even though he'd done that previously the year before. It was still, you know, the fish in there, they're so long. They're like trout water fish, it's like a Windermere fish, it's so long. And we did some pictures and put the thing back, and I was just in awe of it. Got it sort of going back, and I've not caught a fish of that size. I've caught a few getting up there now, but that all sort of etched in my mind. Just everything about that capture was just phenomenal. It was really a feat of angling that I'll probably never repeat again. And I class myself as a predator angler now, but I don't class myself as a lure angler. Even though I've caught big fish on lures, there's a lot of experienced lure anglers who just lure fish. And there's a few friends of mine, Brian Ingram, he said it doesn't count. Joking, because it's on a lure. So I had to do it on the dead baits to prove to him that I could still catch one. But it's just this thing where with piking, we have there's a lot of secrecy involved in pike fishing. It's almost like the carp fishing scene was in the 80s. There's a lot of people don't say anything. There's people that have caught phenomenal numbers of big pike that you would never even heard of. And I mean numbers of 40-pounders, like into double figures. And that sort of sparked an interest in my brain that was like fizzling out with carp fishing, the way that it's come with technology and the drones and the bait boats and everything that's sort of taken away watercraft away from that. It sort of was all new, and it was all fresh, and it felt almost like the fire was burning, like really burning solid, into thinking that if I can replicate this each year, that's all I need out of my fishing. So I decided to stop carp fishing through the winters and really started pike fishing through the winters. So I thought, well, I've done it on Ravensthorpe. I still fish Ravensthorpe, but didn't fish it as hard. The following year I did actually catch another 30 off there. I've had 4 off there now, but the following year I had a 31, and I ended up going on to Pitsford, and I'd fished Pitsford off the bank, and I really wanted a 30 off the bank, and I've still not done it to this day on there. I have on other waters, but not there. And went from fishing Pitsford, and I thought, I'm missing something here. I knew of a lad who caught a 40-pounder off Pitsford off the boat, so need to sort of go in the boats and see if I can catch one, and I managed 2 so far on the boats at Pitsford. So, and quite a number of upper 20s. It was, I think I had 4 over 27 one day. So it was, and one was close to 29 odd, I think. And it's phenomenal days pike fishing, really, when you think about it. And then same again, it started an obsession to catch this 30 out of Pitsford off the bank. I'd never done it. It became very busy in a short space of time on there. So I decided there was another water in Wales, Tros Finnid. We call it Tros. That at the time was one of the best pike waters in the country, even though Chew was throwing up the fish it was. Tros had a phenomenal amount of 30s in it. One lad had 3 in a day. Just bank fishing 2 rods, sardines and what have you. On my first day down there, I had a 35.8 off the bank. I'd lost a fish a similar size as well, just before. And this was all in the space of 2 or 3 years. So I managed quite a number of 30s and just under 40 pound. I thought this pike in Malarkey is quite easy on these trout waters. It really wasn't, because the effort I put into these waters was probably more effort than what I put into my carp fishing in recent years. And it sort of took its toll in a way. Unfortunately, trawls finning being so rocky, and a lot of anglers didn't know how to fish these waters, either with poly balls or braid to get your line out of the rocks. A lot of the fish they were killed effectively, not by design, but people getting cut off, even with 60-pound braids, and the fish didn't last 3 years. They were all sort of washing up dead. And around spawning time, there was one fish that was seen by Stuart Gillam, and it was seen off the dam, and he was stood off the dam, and he said, "Jay," he said, "it's up near 50 pound," and I was like, 50 pound pike, and he was putting a lot of effort in. Real good guy, Stuart, hell of a pike angler, and he managed 8 30s in that season off there, up to 37, and this pike never got caught, but it got found, and it was dying, unfortunately, and they weighed in. It was 49.8. Yeah, it was a phenomenal. It was the same fish that Stuart had seen, obviously, and it was just a shame, really, that it was, had obviously a trace in it, and it had, gone, unfortunately. But I think that was the one chance that it was going to smash the record, and it wouldn't have been beaten again if that had been caught. I think we would have had that same as the old pike record was, obviously beaten recently with Lloyd Chew. Fair play to the lad, first trip on there. Northern lad as well. Brilliant, fantastic. But it's a different class of fishing, and I have started fishing on Chew a little bit more. I've done two trips. I've got a couple more trips coming up this year. But it's a totally different ball game on there. It seems to be a 30s factory, that place, but it is same. It's rock hard still. But there is a lot more 30s in there than anywhere else in the country. So that's sort of a new chapter for me, fishing them sort of waters, and learning the trout waters in a realm of not having technology. As we touched on before, a lot of people use echo sounders, side scans, and they spend thousands of pounds on this technology to catch fish, and they're just concentrating on the screen. They're not watching around them. They're not seeing what's going on around them apart from this screen, and it kind of takes the fun away from it. Even though it's fun watching these things come up and follow your lure, and you watch them take it. I mean, I know a lad, Gary, a Scottish lad, he uses one on Chew, and he had this follow off a pike, and it didn't. It just sat on the bottom. It didn't do anything apart from sat on the bottom. So they anchored up, ledgered, and he caught it like 35. So without that technology, would he have caught that fish? I'm not sure. So I am opening up to a bit more technology. I've invested in a cheaper echo sounder. I've not even got a battery for it yet. So maybe this year I might start just using my watercraft in a way where almost like original Stoneacres days, is that go back to like what I think it is, and then go and check what it is. So it's almost this technology side of it. You're using the watercraft first, and then the technology comes and kind of cross-references what you think it is already. I have a big thing with technology and fishing. It kind of takes away the raw essence of what we all started fishing for, the watercraft aspect. I think once you've developed watercraft and you've got it, you can use the technology, can't you? Because you've already got the craft, but do you lose the craft with the technology? This is the big question in angling, the way the technological era is upon us now. We're going to see this in the next 10 years. We're part of it, and we're going to see who's going to last the test of time, or there's people who are going to get bored very quickly.
So I just want to dig into that story for a while now. So first of all, your first £30 pike is, if you answer, £40. That's pretty insane.
Blew my mind, to be honest.
He's doing it in some sort of style, but I mean, 10 out of 10 for effort. I mean, that's not, for me, there's not a lot of luck involved in that capture. I mean, you've decided, presumably because of that follow on your dead bait, you're thinking those fish are up for a chase, they want to be hunting something.
Yeah.
So you've gone to get your lure gear because you think you know exactly what they want.
In hindsight, just never forget anything when you're fishing. Just make sure it's in the car. That's the best bit of advice I can give anyone. If you don't want to carry it, just make sure you've got it. Because especially the effort and the driving and everything, that's a 7-hour round trip. just for really one lure in my box. I had a box full of lures, but there was only one really that was the important one. And yeah, in hindsight, yeah, you look at it like that. It didn't even cross my mind. I mean, 2 friends had driven down from up north to do the night on Hollowell with me that night. And they weren't members. I was the only member, so I left them there and drove home. And they were there illegally, really. And they packed up in the morning, and I didn't even see them. It was almost this point where we had arranged a social, and we didn't have a social. They understood. They're good friends. They understood how once I'm in that vision. And one of them, my close friend Graham, was like, "You know what you need to do, mate."
I mean, the other thing that's just gone through my head is, would it have been cheaper to go to a tackle shop?
No, we're open. It did cross my mind. Yeah, it did cross my mind. But the way I rig up a certain lure, you can't do that with a tackle shop lure. It was a tackle shop lure, but it's rigged up slightly differently to the normal line throughs or lures that I was using. And yeah, that was the important bit. I've witnessed certain pike take baits, big pike as well, that they grab them at a certain angle, and people think, oh, they eat them all head first. Not always, not always, especially if it's moving as well. If it's like a live bait, for example, that we're not allowed to use, but certain waters are allowed to use. But they'll take it any old how, as long as it's not getting away. They'll swallow it any old how. But to when they grab a fish, is to a lot of the time that the lures. And most lure companies, they're not cottoning on to this yet. Maybe we keep that bit of information for now. But it's almost, once you realise how a pike's mouth is designed to hold on and clasp onto things, we need a rigging arrangement that's slightly different to most of the rigging arrangements that are there on lures these days. Certainly for pike anyway. Perch are a different species altogether. The size of the mouth, and for the size of fish, the perch have the biggest mouth of all fish. So your hook is going in its mouth pretty much. If it takes it, it's very rarely, you might lose it, but it's very rarely not going to hook it with a pike. They're so bony, there's only certain aspects in that pike's mouth where you're going to hook it. And that's so important with a stinger, so to speak, or a treble or a rigged up lure, that it has to be in the right position. And I think that's paramount of it, really. You've got to make sure that the gear's up to it, because I've witnessed some of the best lures on the market, they're not up to it. They've got to be altered for them to be up to it. And yeah, if the right day, windy conditions, overcast conditions, when the pike are smashing it, it's going to swallow it that deep. You're going to hook it. But on the bad days, you won't. And that for me, it has to be on point. So that lure in my box, it sat on the top of my box, and all I could see was that driving home. I was falling asleep and everything driving home. It was terrible, really. The weather was horrendous, windy, wet, and it was... Yeah, the alarm went off at, was it 3:30? I got back at 11:30 at night. Got the lure box straight in the car. I nearly just set off, but I thought I'll die on the road. I'll fall asleep. I'll be dead. And yeah, at the time I just thought, I set my alarm for 3:30. And there was a point I sort of woke up, rain hammering on the window. What am I doing? Am I going insane here? Like, this is like, it's a cross between like insanity and sanity, really. Is this worth your life to catch this fish? Yeah, of course it was. that's
it was, because it paid off.
Yes.
I mean, there are certainly those times where you feel like fate plays a bit of a role.
Very much.
The fact you were there the day before, the fact you saw, if you hadn't seen that fish follow, would you have even gone back? What would you have even? I mean, would it have even been worth it? You wouldn't have driven home for the lures?
No. I'd have stayed there with my friends, and I'd have fished the following day on the deads. Like, I had some really good fresh herrings and sardines and things, and some mackerel, and that in itself, I'll touch on that briefly. But the bait is so important. I have Mick to thank for that, because Mick is like I said, I hold him really high in my friends of pike fishing and my learning around my pike fishing from Mick, because like I say, he's not had a lot of big fish. If he had the time and the access that I've had, he'd have caught twice as many as me. He's just been very unlucky. I've caught 30s around him as well, and it's just been like, oh, it's yours that. I wish I'd just put it on your hook and there you go, but it's not meant to be. He's just recovering from some bad health, so hopefully this next winter we're going to get him it. Yeah, definitely. He'll catch a 40, knowing Mick. Yeah.
I was intrigued when you said about taking John after he was recovered to fish Chew or Ravensthorpe. So I would say Ravensthorpe is probably one of the the lesser known trout water. So what did you know about it at the time, and why was that so high on your agenda?
I had 2 pictures. I didn't know the weights of the fish, but they looked over 35 pound, both of them. We had 3 pictures. One of them was in John's book, and it was a picture of a 40 with Derek McDonald, a 41 something in November, and I had 2 other pictures that I found online that I knew were from Ravensthorpe, and like I said to you before, it's this. I like to do a bit of the everyone does, and then a bit of our own doing. So it's this balance, making a balance between it and trying to make something for yourself instead of, we had a bit of information. You've got to know they're there, because I've wasted a lot of fishing, years of it really, fishing places where they weren't there. Not just pike, other species as well. Being told rumours and not being seen showing pictures and things like that. And life's too short to be chasing myths and rumours. Even though I love that kind of fishing sometimes, you've got to know they're there to give you that 100% effort. Otherwise you do lag a bit because, is it there, is it isn't? It's this doubt in your mind. There has to be no doubt. It became almost the maybes. We know they're there. It's done a 40. That's all we needed to know. And it almost just unfolded in front of us. And I don't think it's done pike of that calibre since then, to be fair. It's done a 40 on the fly, and I know it's done a few close to 40. But they're quite secretive, aren't they, pike anglers? As we know, they won't say a lot anyway, if there has. Being down there a lot, you see it. I know what it looks like from the other side. It's, it was 30 or 28, and you just think, no, bigger than that. But they don't seem to say. So that point of meaning, from Chew to Ravensthorpe, it was from the known to the bit lesser known, I suppose. That's what keeps the fire burning, doesn't it? Because if we're constantly, that's what you're guaranteed on this lake, and everyone's turning up on this lake doing the same thing, it becomes quite boring. For me it does anyway. I just need a change sometimes to keep the fire burning.
I completely agree. I think I just want to know enough. I just want to know, like you said, that I'm not wasting my time. And I don't want to know any more than that. I don't want to know what I'm fishing for. I don't want to know what the best I can ultimately achieve is. I want to be able to prove that myself. I don't want to be able to surprise myself. I want to be shocked at what's in the landing there and go, that is ridiculous. How has that just happened? Yeah, but that's hard to find now, isn't it? Less so in pike fishing, probably.
Yeah, exactly that. It's everywhere. There is a lot of places. I'm cheeky. I've got a list. I'll be open here. I've got a list of 170 trout waters. I just bring them up from time to time when I'm bored. I'm like, I'm chicken over, lad. No, don't say that, but let me pike fish on your lake. I stumbled across a lake that I very nearly got permission to fish the other year, and it's a shame I didn't, because the fish washed up dead at 53 pound. There is fish in there of that calibre now that sort of a few years later, whether he'll ever let anyone pike fish on there, I don't know, but it's only small water, 12-acre lake. Phenomenal number of big fish, 25 fish over 30 pound that he knew of. There was a study, Durham University had done a study on the pike there, phenomenal growth rates, but it was the roach and the trout that made them so big. They're out there, they're everywhere. Like you say, it's almost this point where there's so many waters there, you can only fish a certain amount of them, but a lot of them don't allow it. I do a bit of guesting occasionally, and I'm not going to delve onto that too much, because it's I don't want to criminalise myself into anything here, but there's waters out there with phenomenal fish in that worth a bit of swerving at night. That's all I'll say on that.
I completely understand.
Yeah.
Ravensthorpe was, or is, an incredible place. I mean, like you said, it's where we met one another, and it is quite unique, probably in a trout reservoir sense. I mean, I never thought that I could get excited about trout reservoir piking. I don't really know why. Just the idea of sitting there on a big 1,000-acre bowl of water with the wind howling down it in the winter in a boat, which it can be like, as you described, didn't exactly fill me with enthusiasm. And when I saw Ravensthorpe for the first time, I thought, Christ, why have I not been here before? I just could not believe that I had got on it so late, really. I mean, it's less than an hour from me, and you're travelling, 3 hours, more than 3 hours each way, 3.5 hours each way. And I think I got on it just in time, but I wish I'd got on it earlier. It was a magical place.
There's still fish in there of that calibre that I'm talking about. I've seen them occasionally. Now there's a carp syndicate on there, and my friend Simon, he was the bailiff. He was an ex-Anglian water ranger. He's not their ranger anymore, but he was running the night bailiffing. So we occasionally go out in the boat and with the lamps and stuff, and we'd see them. Brian, again, he was a member of the carp syndicate last year. Seen a fish over £45. And he knows he's caught them that big, he knows what they are, and he didn't get caught. And there were, you know how many anglers, there's 13 boats on, 2 people in every boat. It's a lot of rods fishing for these fish, and there's swervies go on there. Of course there is, there's swervies go on every lake, but you just don't get caught. It's strange. Maybe it's the size of bait that they're eating, maybe it's they'll eat a £2 trout off the bottom and they won't eat for a month. And that time of year when they're feeding up for spawning, you know, you've got to catch them on the right day. But that's the mystery with it. All these waters have them in. All the stories over the years that certainly Brian's told me, and Lee, my other friend, you know the story with the... I won't mention this fish because it's still alive, but phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. You know, unfortunately pulled out of it, lost it 2 weeks before my friend caught it at just under 43. A natural water pike as well. There's places like that, but not many. You know, there's a handful of places in the country that have got that calibre of fish in them, and that place has done too in the last 5 years. You know, so there's something in there that creates it. But what I don't understand in it, why has no one created this? In every other form of fishing, there's the creation of like a carp pond, isn't there, or a certain specimen lake, but no one's really creating it for pike. Maybe in the future somebody will, but maybe we will one day. You never know.
Maybe. You mentioned Pittsford quite a bit as well.
Yes.
Just down the road from Ravensthorpe, also owned by Anglian Water, but 2 totally different venues.
Oh, the chalk and cheese. Totally chalk and cheese. The pike themselves are different altogether. One's a long species, one's a short and fat dumpy species. You would have thought they were the same strain, but they're not. They're different strains. And that's the thing with no one really knows pike strains. This is very infant in its fishing side of things. Certainly fish management side of things, there's inexistent really. There's no, apart from Chew where they manage it around the trout fishing, and the same as Anglian Waters, it's a trout water and the pike fishing comes second. And we've not talked about the other waters that they have as well, because there's all these other big waters, they've got phenomenal piking, but you know, people don't want to blank for 10 days in a row. They want to catch a fish when they go fishing, and that isn't necessarily fishing. You've got to go through the hardships to gain the results, and that's what people have got to understand. Even the younger generation, you know, don't get disheartened when it's not working. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just that it's not the right day, and it will happen on the right day. You've just got to put yourself in that position. Pittsford's a water that I've not finished with Pittsford. I've had 2 30s off there, not big 30s, only small 30s. Me and my friend had one in the same day, and like I said to you, these days where it's going off, you really need to optimise. There's a lad we've touched on personally, a lad Adam Ford. He documents everything, a real clever guy and really good pike angler. And I don't document anything, it's all in here. And that's maybe my downfall, maybe, but that's my dyslexic brain, you see. I can keep it all in there anyway without problem. But he says that certain aspects on Pittsford compared to Ravensthorpe, it's very similar. The conditions are similar, but you're not allowed out on Pittsford in those conditions because it's a big 1,000-acre reservoir. Hence why I started bank fishing it, because you can still bank fish in those conditions, and it does throw up some phenomenal fish. Certainly fish up to £40 has been in recent years. I haven't witnessed one. I've witnessed a 39 off there. Same year there was 2 39s, different fish caught, and that was my first proper season really getting involved with it. It's one hell of a water. Same as Rutland. Rutland's probably done more big pike, like certainly fish over £30 than all of the Anglian waters combined. Which is mad. I'm telling everyone this, but yeah, I'm quite an open guy. Maybe I'll get my tyres slashed for this in the future, but it's something I'm going to have a dabble. I only fished it once last year, and it was because my boat was double booked on Pittsford. I turned up, buzzing like that, and what's going on? Eddie Turner had took my boat. I was just like, cheers, Eddie. Yeah, I was like, can I double up? And he's just gone, yeah, like that. Yeah, right. Not doubling up with you. So yeah, same thing happened to me mate John. Yeah, Eddie. Yeah, for some reason I bet Eddie was like, "Yeah, give me 50 quid down the back seat." But yeah, nice guy Eddie. I like him. He's a good lad. And but yeah, we're scratching the surface. Even I'm scratching the surface with the effort I'm putting in on these waters. There's phenomenal pike. Like I say, my friend had this side scan, and he's side scanning all the deep water down there. It's like 40 foot, 30 foot down at the bowl end of Pittsford. He's getting big pings of them sat on the bottom. And my mate's caught a trout over £20 in there. Massive trout. On dead baits, not fishing for them, like, but some of them are trout, but some of them dwarf the trout. Like there's a number of big fish, like over £40 sat on the bottom down there. But I've talked a bit with Eddie about it, and he doesn't agree with people bottom bouncing baits. So people like with herring, that's bottom bounced, like popped up but leaded around, and it's just bounced along the bottom, and that's all they do. They sit and just drift and bounce baits along the bottom. We tend to, the pike will come up off the bottom and take a bait, so the drifter sort of half depth or 3/4 depth, usually around the feature, where they'll be sat at the bottom of it waiting for things. But these pike are different. They don't seem to take the baits like the other fish, which maybe they're just adapt. I know the jaws change quite a lot. I've only witnessed a handful of fish over £40, but the jaws and everything changes on them. They're not like a 30, which is strange really. You would have thought they would, the same fish, aren't they really? But they change in habit. They're lazier, and I think they might just take a lazy scoop of a £2 trout, and that's it for a month. They don't need to eat. So maybe that's the point where we start using bigger baits. But then go back to Mick, is that he's lost some phenomenal fish in the Lake District using too big of baits.
Hard to hook fish on baits like that.
Yeah, but how do you catch a fish that only eats baits like that? So this is where we're at this moment in time. It's like we've got to be careful on sizes of bait and type of bait, because it's only sea baits on angling waters. But fresh is paramount on there. If I can get fresh baits that haven't been in the freezer, even on chew. I took some fresh sardines that my friend had got. I froze them. They were fresh from a fishmonger's, and I froze them down in packets and took them down. And I only had 4 of them, so I had 2 packs of 4. I had 2 bites, and they were on them sardines. And I had some brilliant smelt, meant to be the best bait that I had. I spent a fortune on these things. Ordered them all in like you do, and then I just went to my local fishmonger, and that's what I caught on. I'm big on bait, but piking's, it's different. We can replicate the real deal, but you're not allowed to use it. I'd love to use trout, you just can't use them. So it's a shame, because they say, oh, it's sea baits. It's something to do with the water ecology and diseases and things, but I'm not sure. In my opinion, I think it's to do with the size of bait, personally anyway, that these fish are eating. Hence when some of them, like we touched on before with the big lure caught pike, they're bouncing huge lures, just bouncing them along the bottom, and this fish had just sat on the bottom. It's not really, it's just snapped at it. It's not really feeding, it's just snapped at the thing. The thing is with pike fishing, it's the thrill's there. We don't know what the biggest fish is in the lake. It's not got a name. The cycles are totally different to carp and other species of fish. They don't last as long, so a water that might be producing loads and loads of big pike, like we witnessed with Rabo, and Tros Finid, there's only a short window there of like 4 or 5 years before it declines, because it's just inundated with pike anglers. There needs to be more on tackle, more on the side of what's safe and what's not to use with pike fishing. There's not a lot of experienced anglers showing people what to do, because they're so secretive, and we're going to change that. We've got some big plans to change all that in the future, and I'm looking forward to that. And it creates a fire burning within me. It's this, the next generation is that they're going to be all right, and they're going to be chasing these things as long as, well after we're gone. That's the bit that puts a smile on my face.
You've spoken a lot about success. You've had some very impressive captures. Let's talk about failure. I think failure is one of those things that we have to get quite comfortable with, particularly as big fish anglers, because let's be honest, the successes are a tiny percentage of the time. We're failing most of the time, aren't we? Yeah. In trying to achieve what we're trying to achieve.
99% of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, catching a fish is one thing, but catching a target fish is, I would class, if I were to say catch a couple of jacks one day, that's a fail. Even though you've caught, it's not really what you're there for. And it's not necessarily it's not necessarily down to you. Even though we failed, it's down to the pike being active and feeding. So a lot of the time there is a big pressure that we put on ourselves that it's down to us. We're not fishing right, we're not doing this right, and we need to change this, we need to change the location, and we put all these factors into it. Failure is, like you've just said, it's most of the time. I'd say 90% of it is failing. But you can't see it as failing, because it's like it means that them 13 days leading up to my 39, if I hadn't have blanked them 13 days, I wouldn't have caught the 39. So we have to think of it like that each fail is a lesson learnt, and every day is a school day. You know, it is a school day. As long as you take that little ounce of knowledge away with you with that failure. Adam's very much so like that, where he's the same. You know, he doesn't publicise. Well, no one publicises about the failures. No one talks about the failures, really, because no one's interested in that. And we need to go and embrace them, because if we don't embrace them, it'll get the better of us, and people give up. I wouldn't have carried on that 14th day. I'd have given up. I'd have thrown the towel in, because I just don't want to fail again. You know, and it's.
I think resilience is one of those things which we don't talk about enough, as particularly as big fish anglers, because if you don't have that, and if you can't bounce back from those failures, you're never going to stay the game long enough to see the successes, are you? I think it can be. I'm sure non-anglers would never believe this, but it can be the most mentally testing game out there, can't it? It can be. It can push you to the brink, which is ridiculous because it's only fishing, but it can really take you there.
It does, yeah, and it does. You know, and I hate to say it, like, this condition is my fishing's not helped with this condition. It has worsened because I've sort of dived in too deep, and hence why I don't fish as much in it now, because I've got to the conclusion that health is wealth, and if my health deteriorates, then I'm not going to be able to fish. But in that moment in time, it's like, no, I'm going. And that fish that I thought, unfortunately pulled out of that my friend caught, it became a bit of an obsession. And every little window, I've got my own business and I work for myself, and I would lose out. My business would lose out because I'm being selfish and thinking, no, I'm down. You know, I need to be there. And I'd drive down to Nottingham just for a small window and fish the Dart Park. And it would be like, just to get there for the evening. And like a 5-hour round trip, and be knackered the following day and not be productive at work, and everything suffers from it. So there's a fine line between being stupid and having success and failure at the same time. We have to acknowledge that. If we don't acknowledge it, they'll just dive straight into the stupidness. We've all got a bit of it inside us, don't we? But that's, I suppose, it's the failures and successes that keeps us going, but the failures that teaches us the resilience, like you just said. That resilience is so important. I've had a lot of bad things thrown at me in life in general, and to bounce back and think that you know, I've had a lot of good things as well, you know, and the good things outweigh the bad things. They're probably about even, but I always hold it like, is your glass half full or half empty? You've got to look at it in a positive light, because if you don't, then it consumes you. I'm big on energy and frequencies and all that, and we create our own success. People say, oh, you're lucky. I don't believe in luck. I believe that we put ourselves in a lucky situation, and without that resilience, we would never put ourselves in that lucky situation. So yeah, luck is real, but I don't believe it is that you're lucky. You know, we've put ourselves there to do that. So yeah, the resilience, that word is it tops all words really, because without resilience there is no success, because failure it dwarfs success.
I mentioned it earlier actually in relation to someone else we were talking about when we were having some lunch, but I think a lot of anglers like to talk a good game because they actually are more afraid of failure than they probably admit.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people can't handle when they don't feel like they can make it happen. The reality is they don't want to put themselves in situations where they might not come out on top, so they don't push themselves to those limits that maybe people like yourself would. Possibly.
I mean, I'm not a sponsored angler, so I use companies' things, but I'm not a sponsored angler, and sometimes sponsored anglers have pressures that we don't, and that may be that they're pressured to catch and pressured to do certain things. There is a person in the game, like everyone will know when I say it, rehooking fish for film. That's like, what? That's just not real. You're creating a false situation here. That's down to the individuals and what they do. If they're going to bring that into light and cause, a conflict in angling, so to speak, just because they're putting so much pressure on themselves to make the best shot, to make the perfect picture. I don't have any notes. I've got something in here, and I was going to make some notes last night about all this, and I thought it's not natural. And angling's natural. It has to be. We're part of a natural environment, and to make it unnatural isn't right. So it's what flows naturally is the important thing. And to talk about the failures is so important to people that are getting into fishing, because they will soon become bored of it and pick up the computer game again. Same when we're a kid, if we're not catching fish, we'll get bored straight away. So you start small, work your way up slowly, and then you can look at specimens in the future. Unless you just get lucky like me and catch them when you're not fishing for them. All that, yeah. But yeah, no, I completely agree. That side of angling is, there's a lot that talk the talk. Don't get me wrong, I've waffled some crap this thing, don't get me wrong, but it's all relevant to what we're talking about. We've touched briefly on bait and subjects within bait. That's very important. There is a lot of aspects there where we're going to go into depth about that in the future, and hopefully that will spark some interest in people, to help them understand like lake ecologies and pHs and certain things, that certain baits fish in different lake substrates better than others, more so for coarse fishing than pike fishing, but that's something we'll touch on briefly, but we'll go into depth on a later episode, no doubt.
We spoke a little bit about how you deal with failure, like the importance of resilience in your fishing. What would you say are some of your most devastating angling moments?
Probably getting hit with a baseball bat on my arm and breaking my arm. All my gear thrown in and broken rods. And
that sounds quite heavy.
Yeah, it was quite bad, that, to be fair. I protected my head and snapped the baseball bat on my arm and snapped my arm, and yeah, it was pretty harsh, that, yeah. I had some incidences like near collisions and like driving and things. Losses of fish, they're just as bad really as broken arms, aren't they, really?
Can be.
Yeah, especially certain fish that we fish for nowadays. And they'll be forever there as failures, I suppose, but the resilience is still fire burning because of that. Really bad moments in fishing, not that many really, not as many as what, we don't tend to remember the really bad things. We like to eliminate those out of our memories, really, don't we? There's been some bad things happen weather-wise, like being on Windermere, for example. It's harsh out there. Especially in a brolly, like middle of the night, you're walking miles to get to certain areas and smashing your brollies to pieces and having to stay there and just sort of try and get some sleep. It just doesn't happen, and you're just wide awake and in all elements. There's certain times, I'll touch on it briefly, there's things out there that we see, you might have seen a few of them, that aren't from this earth. That's all I'll say on the matter. Things that are out in the atmosphere, maybe that we see being outside a lot, that certainly question things here. I've seen things with friends, close friends who are aeronautical engineers as well. We don't have that technology. Like things like that make you question normal reality, I suppose. My close friend Liam, he was a denier of it all, and then we were down Cambridge last year, and I got a panic phone call off him. Oh my God, you're right. And he was like, come running round, and he was like, I've just seen this. It was moving too fast and erratic, and it couldn't have been anything. And then we watched it again the following night, and nothing from this planet anyway. Whether it's skipping through dimensions, I don't know, but there's certain aspects that make us question reality. That's a bit weird, I suppose, with fishing. There's a lot of anglers out there that will relate to that and seen things that are different. Nearly swallowing slugs. There's so many stories. Hooks in fingers. A bulldog there come out the end of the nail. Like lures, you know what I mean? Things like that. Elements of I had a nickname of Crack Off.
I hope that's because you cracked the line. That's what I'm going to say.
Yes. So some of my friends will be giggling at this. I was sort of move away from leaders, and yeah, you're fishing big ranges and you weren't allowed leaders on certain places, and and it would happen multiple times, so hence the name Crack Off. And that's on the dart park. That's my name a lot of the time, even though I don't do it anymore. Tapered lines, saviour. Yeah. But yeah, there's we can laugh about these sort of things. There's things in fishing that sacrifices, I suppose. The sacrifices we make, relationships. A lot of people will relate to that. Certainly women don't have this understanding. Well, some women, I'll mention some women, don't have an understanding of the natural world like we do. And that they find it hard that we are not spending time with them. And it's not for any other reason apart from we need our natural fix. And it's difficult to explain that to somebody who doesn't understand it. So yeah, relationships have suffered. I've not been married, I'm not divorced, I know people that have through it. So there's the obsession side of it that does take over. And we become quite obsessive in a tunnel vision that we have to do this and we have to achieve this goal. And if there isn't an understanding side of it with a partner, then it suffers, the relationship suffers. And yeah, that's probably the worst of it, really, that I'd like to talk about anyway.
What's the one fish that you nearly caught that you didn't catch?
Even though I didn't see it, the near 43 pound pike this past winter, I didn't see it, but I knew it was that fish due to weight and catching fish that are not quite that big, but the second biggest was like 27 pound, and no chance I'd been able to turn it, you know. That knowledge of knowing that you've lost something that's so special, you never know, I might have another chance at it if it survives, but you never know. Other fish, I lost a 50 pound carp due to line giving way. Yeah, and there was an issue with it, I would have thought, but yeah, I didn't go back on that lake. I'd specifically made this spot to catch this certain fish and designed a bait to catch it, and first bite was that fish, and I played it in, and yeah, everything was fine, and all of a sudden it was right next to the net, ready for netting, and then the line just went. You know, in that moment where your rod's not even arced properly, you know, and it's just obviously a damaged line, and that fish has unfortunately been ottered now, so there will be no chance of catching that one again. But I never went back after that. Salt's too deep into the wound almost. That doesn't allow you the resilience to recover from something like that. And to say at the beginning of the podcast, Kev's never caught that one in the end. One of the biggest fish in Stoneacres now, and that'll be engraved till I die. You know, that whole success and failure, how slim it is, how close it is, and how many times I was close to netting that fish. If there was someone in the boat, it would have been in first time, but it was 10 times of trying and not being able to succeed. The failures, I suppose, carry us through. The next time I'm going to put that extra effort in, or the next time I'm going to make sure I work harder so I can afford a motor, so I don't put myself in that situation. So it's the learning curves, I suppose. Without the successes and failures, we wouldn't be able to distinguish between them, I suppose. Yeah. Sometimes it's knowing when to walk away. Yeah, or being forced to walk away sometimes as well. That emotional wreck afterwards. Yeah, that's probably one of them.
We'll end on a high.
Yeah.
I always think the campaigns that have meant the most to me have been the ones that have ended well, but have also been painful along the way. And you can see a journey. What's been your most rewarding fishing campaign? Really, in campaigns, in recent years, I don't have the time to campaign. So I'd like to say, yeah, I'm fishing a certain water, maybe certain target fish. But the only real campaign of success was the guesting bit on the Northern Mere. There was probably 30 fish in the lake at the time, and the one fish that I really dearly wanted. So I had appendicitis, and my appendix nearly burst. And there was a book called Forgotten Chapters, Gaz had wrote, and my friend who I met on Stoneacres, Rob Gillespie, and I don't know him too well, but Chris Winstanley as well. I think Rob's actually stopped carp fishing now, but they did a guest chapter on there.
and it was this fish called Jim's, and I was reading it while I was recovering my appendicitis, that sparked this. I want this fish, and this needs to be a campaign, and I went out of my way. The lengths involved in that were phenomenal, really. Guesting, I'm not going to say anything else on the matter, but all to the realms of gates and fences that could kill you. That it's pretty drastic. And the lengths of the walks, we're talking like 3 miles, 4 miles every time. Baiting up on Thursday nights, 10 o'clock train, jump over the gate, over the fence, because the fence would rattle and the houses were only there, and it was military. It was almost military. And putting in 120 kilo, walking 4 miles with 2 buckets of bait over a big strap like that. I mean, I'm a small lad, but yeah, 20 kilo in each bucket. You can imagine like a boat blowing it up straight out. And I'd probably put out 160 kilo over the space of a few weeks. And I started off on a silt spot, and it was gravel when I'd finished. And I didn't catch it off that spot, funny enough. It was all to do with the following day, and I went there for the day, and seen it all unfold. Fed it certain areas, and specifically fed it in this one area, and designed a way to catch that fish without the line being in the water, like a washing line method. That bank stick was probably still there to this day. But yeah, and to the extreme of catching the thing as my first bite. And the whole scenario, I slept in, my battery died, and I woke up like this light, it's like not good, like panic, while winding like one and looking out of the other rod and the tail like this over the spot. And I'm thinking, well, I know how deep it is, that's one of them. And then, wow, swallow, drop back in. That fish, and I was already late, so I was pushing it, time scale, self takes, pressure. I'll sure send you a picture of it. You're not publicising it, put it that way. But yeah, it crapping myself in the picture, sweat and everything, and walking through the 4 mile back to the van in the estate, getting everything on the fence, jumping over the fence, and then as I pulled over, there's like a little bridge where the railway is, pulled over, literally the Land Rover with the Rangers started to stop to let me out. That's how close it was, how fine that was, that fine line of that campaign, to be successful. See you later, never to be seen again. That stands out for me as the probably the most successful campaign, because there was a certain fish in mind, and that was the fish that was achieved from the target. From setting out, being ill, not being able to walk, from having my appendicitis, to achieving that goal, I was physically and mentally drained and shattered by it. And I'd like to say, in angling, it shouldn't be like that, but the whole aspect of it, the guesting side of it, it shouldn't be like that. It should be done properly. So I do have a bit of doubt and a regret with it that I didn't do it properly. Life's too short sometimes, and I will redeem myself somewhere down the line to do it right. In maybe not that fish because it's passed away now, but some aspect of it, I'll certainly redeem myself and do it properly instead of cheating.
I think that's a wonderful story to end on. Jamie, thank you. You have inspired me more than probably any other angler in the short time that we've known each other. We've not known each other that long.
Not really.
But your enthusiasm is always infectious. No matter what you're going through in your own life, you're always able to impart enthusiasm on others. And yeah, I thank you for that, because sometimes when I've been really struggling, you've got me buzzed again. Nice. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, thank you both. Great time. Excellent. Job done.